Hello, my name is Lais and I'm gonna do a hacking communities presentation in 10 minutes, cracking the code to vibrant communities. First of all, community building matter, and in this case, this is mostly oriented for those who are in business. Either you're working on building your company's organizational culture or growing your customers' database and trying to enhance loyalty. Community building can apply for your business. So let's take a closer look. First of all, this is not for marshmallow eaters. That is a reference for delayed gratification. Community building is something that takes time. If you're interested about it, the marshmallow research is based in a Stanford study done with kids where they would hand one marshmallow to a kid and say, "You get a second one. You can if you can hold on for some minutes." And the kids who waited for the second marshmallow later on in life demonstrated better results, either it be in their results at school, in their personal lives, and so on. So hold on before you eat that marshmallow because community building is something that takes longer than traditional marketing, but it may give you better results. Next, a quick overview of this conversation, we're going to talk about guiding principles in part 1 and a practical guide to community building in part 2. And we'll finalize with an orientation on how to let it grow. Let's take a brief look at hacking communities in a nutshell. And this, for you who are impatient, is an overview of everything we're going to talk about. First, we're going to explain why belonging matters. Loneliness is the epidemic of our era, and belonging is a biological imperative. From there, we'll talk about how technology has changed the world and our need to reinvent communities to build better and more diverse community around the world, especially in the post-COVID-19 pandemic era. Finally, we'll talk about starting a community from scratch, like building a home where you feel like you can be your most authentic self and you can share it with others. And finally, we're going to talk about engineering serendipity, which is the act of bringing people together, building collective relationships, and building trust through interactions. So let's take a look at the first step. First of all, this is me. My name is Lais, as you can see me, and I've spent over 13 years now building communities. I started from a nonprofit, managing 2,000 volunteers across 3 countries in Argentina, Chile, and Uruguay. Later on, I moved to working at the first accelerator in Latin America called NXTP Labs as a marketing assistant, which I didn't know, in fact, was a community building role. And in 2014, I moved to Malaysia and started a chapter of Startup Grind in Kuala Lumpur. That was after I was already the founder and director of this chapter of Startup Grind in Buenos Aires, in Argentina. I had been doing that for a year plus. But then, as I moved to Malaysia and started the chapter in there, that community blew out. And then I joined the headquarters of Startup Grind in Silicon Valley as an Africa and APAC director and helped grow from a couple of dozens to hundreds of chapters across that region, and also helped define the vision of growing from 75, 80 to 500 chapters around the world. At the time they thought it was crazy, now we have 600 chapters of Startup Grind worldwide. Then I also worked for the Malaysian government as the only Brazilian in there, helping build the startup ecosystem in Malaysia and became a representative for them across Southeast Asia. Also helped build their accelerator program and their academy for entrepreneurs. And later, I joined Startup Genome, helped build startup ecosystems in over 75 countries. In the middle of this road, I started a company, sold that company, and that's too much about me. You can read more about me on LinkedIn and we can connect there. Let's move on. Let's talk about the guiding principles of community, and this is the most important part of it. Why do we need communities? So belonging is our source code. As Spock would say, we need communities to live long and prosper. Communities, according to Yuval Noah Harari and many other researchers, is not only something that it's nice to have, it's fundamental to our existence. Back when we were naked, clawless creatures dwelling in caves, we would not survive on our own. So our body needs belonging and to survive. And when we are not together, when we do not belong, when we do not feel part of something, our body shoots messengers to our brain to say, hey, you are in danger. One of them being cortisol, and that decreases our immune system and so on. That serves only to say that not belonging sends a message of threat to our bodies, because back in time when we were alone, when we were naked, dwelling in caves, we needed to belong to survive. According to Yuval Noah Harari and Sapiens, the real difference between humans and other animals is not in the individual but on the collective level. And today we are facing the loneliness epidemic that started even before the COVID-19 pandemic hit. In January 2018, the UK appointed a Minister of Loneliness. 2 years later, January 2020, the 61% of Americans pointed out that they feel lonely based on the UCLA loneliness scale. And if you think about this being mostly around old people, you're wrong, because 40% of people aged between 16 and 24 in the UK said to feel lonely most of the time. Majority of the most highest growing affiliation in politics is to non-partisans, and fastest growing affiliation to religious groups in the latest years has been someone who does not have is not affiliated to any existing religion. So we have changed the way we belong, and that's causing us to feel lonelier. Tech has also been playing a key role in it. So let's just drive towards the fact that it is a biological imperative to know that we belong, as I have just mentioned, because of how our bodies understand belonging and the importance it has to making us feel good. When we belong, our bodies send positive messages to our brain. So it shoots hormones like oxytocin, known as the cuddle hormone and the love hormone for most of us. But oxytocin can be released only from a high five or from an eye-to-eye connection, which we can have on Zoom, by the way, or through any online conversation. So belonging feels good, and it's good for our health. It shoots feel-good hormones that can boost our immune system and help us live longer. Susan Pinker did a research, and she got a lot of inspiration from John Cacioppo, who's a social neuroscientist who actually invented that field and did a ton of research about the impact of loneliness in our bodies. And she figured that people living in blue zones had high levels of social integration, and that was the main indicator that they would live above 100 years, more even than if they were eating pasta or not, or drinking a lot of wine or not. You can find more about that research in The Village Effect, a book by Susan Pinker. Also, she has a great TED talk about it. So the way we gather currently has changed, but the reason we stay together remains the same. And that has been accelerated in 2020 in the post-COVID-19 crisis. And we are currently more connected than ever. We are more mobile than ever. We can take an airplane and go to Asia. I'm in Brazil right now, so I could go to Asia tomorrow or vice versa. I can find information about many places online. I can find people around places online, and I have a mini computer in my pocket all the time, a phone. We have more than ever information and freedom to choose where to belong, and we have freedom to belong anywhere. So what are we gonna do with that freedom? In a world when loneliness is an epidemic, building communities and building better communities is our responsibility. In a nutshell, we need to reinvent communities. Belonging matters, and it will always matter. We need to build better communities, leveraging on technology to also embed more diversity in it. When we're free to belong anywhere, we should have better communities. But let's talk about it. What does community even mean? I like to see that as simple things, like people having something in common, people sharing anything. And here's a few ideas to differentiate community from other things that we may see as just an aggregation, a crowd, or a group of people. To be a community, you must have three things: identity, connectedness, and growth. Identity meaning that we can share, that we can relate. We share mindset, we share something. I feel represented by your community, and I feel like representing you. So I would wear a t-shirt, I would put your name on my LinkedIn, etc. So I feel like I can relate, and I feel that I'm part of it. Connectedness means that it's not about a monologue, it's not about a centralized organization. The conversation goes in all directions. We all are in touch with each other. So every dot is connected to one another. And finally, growth. Because I feel like I'm part of it, I feel ownership towards it because it's part of my identity. And because I'm connected to everyone, it grows from one person to another, like nature grows. It grows organically. And that means, organicity means that we grow like fractals, like nature grows, and potentially we could grow at an exponential rate from 1 to 2 to 2, from 2 to 4 to 8, and then to 32, and etc. and so on. Sorry if I'm like not doing the right math in here. So moving on, building communities is, by the way, Cool Kids Club, not Cook Kids Club, because this handwriting is weird. Building communities is different from a Cool Kids Club, whereas and many of us grew up thinking of belonging as an American high school movie. Belonging is different than fitting in and trying to pretend that you belong somewhere. Cool Kids Clubs, or what David Brooks at the Second Mountain calls tribalism, it's about fitting in. pretending to be someone you're not. Brené Brown also refers to the difference between fitting in and belonging in her book Brave in the Wilderness. Cool Kids clubs are about fitting in. They are territorial, fear-driven, and micromanaging. Communities are about belonging. True belonging are about welcoming. They are love-driven and empowering. It's about you being your truest self and feeling at home, a place where you can take your shoes off. Another difference that I like to make is between traditional marketing and the community building approach. If you're doing business that's especially interesting for you. Traditional marketing is about transactions, advertising, product, price, place, promotion. Community building is more about relationships, conversations, people, purpose, principles, and participation. Overall, like Jeff Bezos says, brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So community building is more about building a brand by enabling people to talk. Especially in today's era, you have no option. People talk about your brand, want it or not. So you might as well host conversations than try to do the monologue. To get to the point and the final point of this, the core values of communities, I believe that even though you can have your own set of values within a specific community, there are three core values that are relevant across anything that wants to be defined as a community. These are authenticity, humility, and abundance. Authenticity is what enables you to create a space of true belonging, and it relies on vulnerability. You must create safe space where people feel like belonging. Humility is about knowing and being aware that you will grow obsolete. You may start a community, you may be always the guardian of its brand and of its core values, yet you matter as much as everyone else. You're special as so everyone else is. So being a humble leader is extremely important to be a community builder. And finally, abundance. Understanding the value of giving first, sharing knowledge, and understanding that the rising tide lifts all boats. The more I learn, the more my ecosystem grows, the more I grow with it, which is a basic logic of every startup ecosystem, where basically I learn the most of what I have learned on community building that came from startup ecosystems like my home ground in community building, and that key value of abundance is fundamental to any community, and I bring that mostly from the startup scene. There's a great study by Annalise Axelian in the Regional Advantage where she says, why did Silicon Valley stay ahead of Route 128 in Boston in the terms of developing a startup ecosystem which thrives and is known worldwide? And she explains it based on the idea of that culture of openness and sharing that they had in the Silicon Valley from the get-go, and that influenced every startup ecosystem around the world. So that's the value of abundance and sharing. So next, we'll talk about storytelling. We're going to get to the point where we start talking about how to build communities, and that's by creating a space where we share beliefs. So Yuval Noah Harari says that humans are the only animals that use language not only to describe reality, but also to create fictional realities. And as long as everybody believes in the same fiction, we follow the same rules, we follow the same values, we make similar decisions. And how do we bring it to community building? We understand the concept of fiction as storytelling and creating an alignment through a story that defines values, that defines decision, that will define actions and culture. Repeated values would generate similar decisions that would generate similar actions, and overall we will create behavior. So when we align on values, it's more likely that our actions will be the same even when no one is looking. So that means fewer dollars that you're going to spend on advertising, forcing people to think a certain way, building monologues, and less in micromanaging, trying to make sure that people act in a certain way. When we part from similar values, we will create similar behaviors, and that creates a similar culture. So where do you start from? Start from telling your story. Before you tell your story though, you have to know who you are. And who you are is not built by who you think you are or your labels. It's about your journey. In every story that we love, the journey defines the character. And there would not be a hero without a journey. From the Odyssey to Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, these people only have become characters we love because they had a journey, because they went from point A to B. So my question to you is, what's your story? Where do you come from? What brings you here? What brings you to the world? What brings you to this company? What brings you to build this community? Why are you doing this? What is your journey? And as Dorothy would say in The Wizard of Oz, there's no place like home. The point of building communities is like building a home where you can be your most authentic self. So that home is that idealistic place, the destination of our journeys from again, the Odyssey to The Wizard of Oz, from Bilbo Baggins to many others. The idea in here is that you are on your journey to be your most authentic self, and in finding your home and building your home, and finding the place where you can be yourself authentically, take your shoes off, and everything that we do when we are at home. That is your journey, and in building that place, you can welcome others so that they also find home. So the idea is that you find your own sense of home and share it with others. I have a framework for crafting a story and creating a character, which is called the character diamond. I have more instructions about it in the website hackingcommunities.com. So to keep it short right now, because this is better done on a one-on-one basis, or if you can read the whole instructions, I'll give you this tip. Check it on the website, find this framework, find how to create yourself or your brand as a character. Now let's get to the point of doing it in practice. Let's build a community from scratch. Next part.